Hello YouTube! Today we're going to talk about a key element in wine, and in red wine in particular, tannins, in order to understand what the deal is and why are tannins an essential part of wine. Tannins are vegetal substances produced as a defense mechanism that can be found in the leaves, bark or roots of certain plants. This is why we find tannins in various beverages, such as tea, coffee, beer and of course wine. Today, in order to explain you tannins, I'm going to need a teapot, an egg, and a piece of cheese. But that's for later. For now, in order to understand what we're talking about, let's start by some wine chemistry 101, and since this is a rather complicated topic, chemists among us will forgive me a few shortcuts. Tannins are part of a larger group of substances called phenols that can be divided into four classes. First, there are anthocyanins, which are colored pigments ranging from red to purple, and flavones, another kind of pigments ranging from yellow to orange-red. Then, we have phenolic acids that are of special interest in wine since they are a component of wood tannins and are also responsible for the aromas of vanilla or cinnamon. Finally, there are tannins, compounds that can be pigmented or not and contribute to the structure of wine with alcohol or acid. They also help to fix color, binding with other molecules to form polyphenols. They come primarily from grape skin and seeds and ripen throughout the year until harvest to reach phenolic ripeness, the maturity of tannins and flavor compounds, which is different from the physical ripeness corresponding to the sugar concentration in the berries. After harvest, grapes are placed into vats for fermentation, which is the transformation of berry sugar into alcohol and carbonic gas by the action of yeasts. The gas pushes to the top of the vat a cap made of skins, seeds and pulp that macerates to give the wine tannins and aromas. In order to enhance this extraction, two techniques are being used: punching down and pumping over. Since I don't have access to a winery right now to show you live what happens, I'm going to try to give you an idea of these two techniques in another way, and this is when my teapot will come in handy. The first technique is the punching down, which consists in breaking the cap and plunging it into the liquid to ensure extraction of the tannins, as I am demonstrating here with a tea bag. Widespread from Burgundy to Portugal, it is performed either manually with a long stick or via a robotic arm, or even by harvesters stamping on the grapes by foot. The second method, called pumping over, draws liquid off the bottom of the vat to pour it onto the cap in order to improve extraction. Typically used in Bordeaux, it allows a greater oxygenation of the must, ideal for some varieties such as Cabernet Sauvignon. Just like punching down, it can be performed several times a day during fermentation, and the frequency of the operation depends on the winemaker and the style of wine desired. Then, the wine enters in the maturing phase, where it is exposed to a limited amount of oxygen. Traditionally, wood is preferred as it allows a micro-oxygenation of the wine, but other materials are also being used as well, such as concrete or clay amphoras. When new, wood also provides tannins to the wine, and the most commonly used sorts are oak, of course, but also chestnut or acacia. Oxygen aggregates tannins into larger particles by a process called polymerization that improves color stability in red wines. Tannins also have the ability to react with proteins and precipitate them. We use a technique called fining to get rid of the excess of compounds in the wine. In order to fine the wine, we use proteins either of animal origin, such as albumin from egg whites, or vegetal proteins from peas or wheat, which allows to produce vegan wine. Putting egg white in a barrel to fine wine may seem a little weird. Yet, this technique is similar to the one used by every chef to clarify a broth into a crystal clear consommé. The wine is then separated from its impurities settled at the bottom of the barrel by racking, and then further matures until the time of bottling. It is this ability of tannins to react with proteins that will also determine the texture we feel in the mouth while tasting. Let me explain. Tannins agglomerate over time to form larger and larger particles. During bottle aging, this process continues until the particles become so large they eventually fall to the bottom of the bottle as sediments. This polymerization has a positive effect, since fine particles give a bitter and astringent feel, while larger ones provide a mellower texture. This is why we say that tannins get polished over time. Why? Because larger particles react with the proteins in our saliva and give this softer sensation. So the tannic profile of the wine depends both on the amount as well as the grain of tannins, and by grain we are referring here to the perceived texture. So how do we talk about it? With simple words, images to illustrate how it feels. If it is vegetal and slightly harsh, we'll talk about green tannins. For a marked astringency, we'll call the tannins coarse or rustic. And if there is a lot of tannins but their texture is very fine, we can describe it as the firm structure of polished or powdery tannins. Finally, to convey a soft and mellow sensation on the palate, we'll describe the tannins as silky or velvety. Now that we have understood what tannins are and how they contribute to the texture of wine, let me answer a few frequently asked questions by a little tasting featuring 4 wines I have chosen for you today. Are tannic wines the most deeply colored and vice versa? To answer this question, I have poured 3 glasses of 3 different wines. The least tannic of the 3 is a Burgundy Pinot Noir, a Morey-Saint-Denis from Domaine Odoul-Coquard. Then, we have a Tannat from Madiran, made by Château Bouscassé. And then, the most tannic wine of them all is a Nebbiolo from Barbaresco, made by the cooperative, but it's also, as you can see, the lightest one in terms of color. Generally speaking, deeply colored wines are the most tannic, but I have chosen on purpose one of the few counterexamples. By the way, there's also a handful of varieties that are rich in color but poor in tannins, such as Dolcetto. Here, the Morey-Saint-Denis tannins are rather extracted yet velvety, while the Madiran proposes a solid structure of grapey tannins. Finally, the Barbaresco shows a big structure with a lot of fine sandy tannins. Why do we pair red wines with red meat? Nothing to do with color. Once again, it is because of the protein-tannin relationship that gives this mellow sensation. On the other side, tannins don't like fat very much. It makes them harsh and even metallic. This is why tannic reds clash with fish, and why, unlike a widespread opinion even in France, red wines don't pair well with most cheeses. So forget about your red wine with camembert, and choose to pair with a cheese like this Abondance from Savoie, a white wine, local preferably, a sweet wine, or even some bubbles from Champagne or elsewhere. Are there tannins in white wine? Normally no. The skin of white grapes contains less tannin than red varieties and is typically discarded during winemaking, so there are virtually no tannins in white wines. However, there is an exception. White grapes vinified with skin contact, like red wines, which produces slightly tannic wines with a copper tinge called orange wines. Originally a traditional style from Georgia, examples can now be found in France, in Italy, or in Slovenia, like this Ribolla Opoka from Marjan Simcic. This wine comes from the Brda region, at the border with Italy. It is made with a local variety called Ribolla Gialla, vinified on the skins to obtain this copper gold colored wine with slightly powdery tannins and notes of apricots and dried almonds that would pair beautifully with my cheese. Are tannins good for your health? Tannins are antioxidants, which beneficial effects on health are well documented. However, wine also contains alcohol and its abuse is harmful to your health. So drink responsibly, and if you want plenty of antioxidants, go for fruits or vegetables. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, that you'll feel more confident talking about tannins during your next tasting, and see you soon for another wine. Cheers!